This is day 3 of working with Hank. We decided that first thing in the morning we were going to take a walk, and I was going to take it with his owner to see how we're both getting on, and she can sort of see some of the methods I would recommend for working with Hank, building up his engagement, stopping pulling, and encourage him to walk loosely on leash. So the very first thing I start doing is I just start doing a little bit of engagement before the walk to base where he's at, and also to encourage him to start following me from the get-go. Honestly, if you do about 5 to 15 minutes of training before your walk, it can be really, really helpful. As long as you don't build up too much excitement. Sometimes building up too much excitement before a walk can cause your dog to be highly aroused on the walk and have his own problems when your dog is too excited. Another thing to note, as you can tell here as well, he absolutely adores his guardian on his owner. That's absolutely lovely. So there was just a dog over there. So I'm hoping to sort of get him out so we can get a glimpse of the dog in the distance, and then we can start already using positive reinforcement because the distance is far enough for me starting to be desensitized to a certain degree to it. Something to bear in mind with this as well is pack mentality is a thing with dogs. If you have a group of dogs, you take out a group of 4 dogs, for example, they have a strong possibility of one dog acting or multiple dogs acting differently because they're in a group. Especially if one is reactive. Sometimes it can reduce their reactivity, other times it can increase it. So this is pretty much the baseline of what the basic exercise of what we're going to be doing with Hank today. If you've heard on your walk when your dog pulls, just stop. I've never seen this actually working. I think the owner gets frustrated, the dog gets frustrated, and you're sort of missing half of the puzzle. Whereas if we stop, get the dog to come back to us by walking backwards, applying a little bit of leash pressure, dropping the leash pressure the second they come, and then reward him for being next to you, then start moving forward. That's how we can really do it. So if your dog is disengaged, stop, apply a little bit of leash pressure, you can call out their name, then walk backwards a little bit, and then reward them when they come back to you, and you can use your marker, yes, as they're coming back to you, which will build that little bit more excitement. And then when they're next to you as well, you can then reward them being next to you. That's a very, very simple way of processing it. And if you do this every single time your dog pulls, so right here, for example, I can't go back into a road, so I move to the side and pull that way. He also just saw a dog there. And if you're going through a force-free route, this is more or less the baseline of what you can be doing. Then we encourage scatter feeding, which we've already been practicing in our garden, so he knows what to do. We don't have a solid cue for that yet, but that's what we're doing. And this is what I'm discussing with our guardian or owner right now, is explaining that when there's a dog, you can follow them. Following a dog is going to be much, much easier as opposed to a dog coming towards you. I've had people say, when my dog's reactive, I try and get him into a sit. Issue I have with that is great if it actually works, but the issue I have is a lot of the time the dog will feel more stressed being in a stationary position. It's great if your obedience can do that, but ultimately I'd much prefer to have my dog moving around and then making a choice on their own, and we can encourage that again through scatter feeding. Smelling and putting the head down can be a sign of appeasement to the other dog. You'll notice sometimes when a dog disengages, turn the head, walk away, and they just start smelling the ground. This is pretty much a way of a dog saying, I don't want any trouble. Right there you can see he was walking beautifully nicely, so he gets a reward next to him. This was a super strict walk. Every time he gets in front, I'd stop, bring him back, reward him, and possibly change directions as well, just to reinforce that. The issue I have right now is I'm with his owner, and I suck at multitasking. So I do multiple things at once, rather than just focus on the dog or focusing on the explanation. And that is something I do need to work on as a dog trainer, because you need to be able to explain something before it happens and then after it happens while also handling the dog. This is all going really, really well, but obviously sometimes it doesn't go well, and that will bring us up to the next point. We had been out for about over 20 minutes at this point, and I did have another recording of reaction from Hank, but unfortunately I deleted it, or maybe I didn't record it, I'm not too sure. This is when we were on the way home and we saw another dog cross the street. Hank is way over threshold at this point. I try giving him treats, which are very high value, try and get him to stop. He doesn't. And this is the issue when you've got a dog that's over threshold. You can't really train him. We should have ended the walk much sooner so that it keeps him under threshold, but we sort of just got bad luck dogs we are meeting, and sometimes that's just how the walk ends up. This really, really bummed me out out because we started off so strong and then we got to this stage and it all went wrong. But that's life. It's full of ups and downs. So I'm trying different stuff. To be honest, the only thing I reckon that could have stopped him there would have been punishment or time. So I didn't correct him or anything. We sort of just kept trying to walk through it. But his lead biting was bad. At the end there, you can also see that I actually praise him and pet him. This is one of the big things that dog owners aren't good at, especially when a dog is reactive, is actually rewarding the behavior you want to see. What happened 10 seconds ago is done. You need to live in the moment just like dogs do. And the second they stop, you need to drop all your emotions, all your frustration, and be positive again. So after our walk, I give Hank a few hours rest, and then I decide to go back out and continue training. Start the day of the training off with some fetch, and the reason we're doing this is to keep working on the drop cue as well as to encourage him coming back to us. Very, very simple. I trade him something higher value than the ball to get him to drop it. When he drops it, we then also initiate a game of fetch and play. You can tell he starts getting a bit tired and a bit bored because his distance that he maintained from me increases because he wants to keep the ball to himself rather than running to chase after it. This is when I decide to put him back on lead so that we can start doing a little bit of leash training. And I think, cool, we'll do a bit of desensitization, just do some very light obedience with very, very little to no leash pressure. Again, with Hank, lasts about a minute, and then the same thing that happened on the last 2 days happens again. Lead biting kicks in. He nips it there, I stop him with an get him to refocus. The punishment is me removing reward from him. And then the second I move the lead, triggers him into this response. Yes. This then goes on for a while. Then I do manage to take it down a notch and again do a little bit of obedience and actually manage to snap out of him, which is an improvement considering the first few days, and also on the walk we couldn't get him out of it. Once he starts biting, that's it, he's done. So there is a little bit more of impulse control and a slight bit more understanding. The problem is, after this was the third day of really seeing it, I started to get a little bit frustrated. So it's quite frustrating when you're unsure in which direction you need to go and you're supposed to be the one helping the dog. So I decided to take it down a notch and just sit down and think, try it and just have a nice time with him, give him some belly rubs and stuff while I contemplate what my next move is. When you're in this frame of mind as well, it's important to actually stop dog training. If you're not in a very good headspace, that will 100% reflect on your decision making with your dog. And something that you can normally emotionally not let bother you starts to build up. So we took a bit of a break after that, and then we ended up the day on a tug of war session. And the reason we're doing tug of war is more for me, because I know this is a game that we can work on and I can end the day on a positive experience rather than being swallowed in negative thoughts. And so if you are struggling with your dog, reactivity or whatever, you do need to have success for you, not purely for your dog as well. You do need to have success so you don't keep beating yourself up. And if that is the case, just take it down a notch, go back to basics and have a little bit of fun with it, and then start again the next day. Dog training isn't always going to be super positive, and unfortunately in social media not enough people show their own mistakes or don't admit to it. I could have very easily cut that to a 5-minute video, making it look really good, make myself look perfect, but I don't want my channel to be like that. I want it to be a lot more real rather than this typical influencer style of training. But yeah, hopefully you appreciated the video. If you made it to the end, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate you. And hopefully it helped.